So I was walking home from a friend's house, and there was an individual dressed as a police officer who kind of flagged me down. And I was pretty violently raped at knife point when I was 12.
Let's be honest about recovery.
The rewards, the challenges.
Let's talk about our failures. We are flawed people, after all.
Let's challenge the stigmas that weigh us down.
Because while most of us are looked at, few of us are seen.
Let's talk about addiction.
And how Christ overcomes our weaknesses.
Because we are loved.
Because we are loved.
Because we are loved.
We are loved.
We are because loved. We are loved.
Hi, my name's Hayden. I'm 25 years old. I'm from Fairhope, Alabama. I am a mom, a sister, a daughter, a Christian, a veteran, and I'm a raging alcoholic until my life was changed in 2022.
Hey, and welcome back to Jesus Loves Addicts. I'm Kathryn. This is Paul. Today we're going to be interviewing Hayden. Claire is 25 years old from Fairhope, Alabama. She's a single mother whose life was nearly destroyed by alcohol. When her son was born, she knew she had a purpose and a reason to fight. It hasn't been easy, but today she is going to tell us on how it's been worth it. Claire, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I know we talked briefly, your no to start at the beginning, and we will interrupt, ask questions, and you just tell us your story.
Okay, so from the beginning, I grew up in a two-parent household for the most part, and I had a pretty good childhood. I have a little brother, and everything was pretty okay till I was 12. Everything was exactly what you'd expect from like a nuclear family household. My mom stayed at home with us for a lot of the time when we were little. She went back to work when we started school. She went to school to be a nurse. And everything was good. It wasn't perfect, but what family is, until I was about 12 years old. And something happened to me, and I was very sick after that. And I was, I was stuck in fight or flight. I was stuck there for what I know now was over half my life. And that led to any sort of destructive compulsion you can imagine. I did it. And I did it to the fullest extent.
And that started at 12? Okay.
Can I ask you what happened? Like you said, something happened.
Sure. So I was walking home from a friend's house. She lived in not the best area, but it's Fairhope. So even not the best area is a safe area. And there was an individual dressed as a police officer who kind of flagged me down. And I was pretty violently raped at knife point when I was 12. And I didn't have the verbiage to tell you that at 12.
Yeah.
I was probably 15 before I could call it what it was.
Yeah.
And it was nobody I knew. I say he was dressed as a police officer because we really don't know if he was or was not. It could have been an act of gang violence. That's been theorized. It could have been an actual police officer from a different city or a different county. We don't know. And I try not to think about that too much because I'll spiral into it.
Were you able to tell them at 12? Or
that didn't come out till I was 14. It didn't come out. And I was nowhere near my family when it did come out. Like I said earlier, I did every compulsion to the full extent at that point. I had a pretty bad eating disorder at that time. And I went to treatment.
After that.
Yes, sir.
When you said you'll spiral into it, what do you mean? Spiral into the need for answers? Spiral in, like, is that?
I'll spiral into the need for answers, but I'll also try to make sense out of such a senseless act of violence.
Yes.
And I'll really put myself in a dark place if I harp on it for too much. Okay. Not harp on the fact that it happened.
Right.
But harp on why it happened and why it was me and why.
Where is he now? And
where
has
is he
done
now?
it?
What's he doing now? Could it have happened again for somebody else? If I would have said something, could someone else not be a victim?
Right. I can see that.
So I try not to think about that too much, but I just don't know who he was. I could tell you what he looks like. I could tell you what he sounded like. I could tell you what he smelled like. I can't give you a name, and I can't give you an occupation,
Right.
And I don't want to anymore.
Sure.
Right.
But when that came out, I was in treatment for an eating disorder in Arizona. So there was a psychiatrist there who would try to get to the root of it, because with things like addiction and like eating those really compulsive, destructive behaviors, especially in such a young child, there's a root cause. And they couldn't figure it out for me. I was weeks in, and they couldn't figure out what happened. And she sat me down, and she was like, "What? Any sort of sex abuse? Because it sounds like sex abuse, but you're not telling me." And I was like, "Well, this happened," and I didn't understand the concept of like a mandatory reporter. So I didn't know that would get back to my parents. I didn't know that would get out.
Because at this time you're 14.
Yeah, I'm a kid.
Yeah.
I think the distance between my life and where I was at in that moment, I think that was what let me come out and say this.
Yeah.
Because I was willing to take that to my grave. And she looked at me, like the doctor looked at me, and she was like almost relieved, because now everything made sense.
Yeah.
Everything's made so much sense. And I was so depressed, and I was so angry, and I didn't come from a bad home.
Yeah.
So my parents didn't understand either.
To them, did it just look like you went from being a normal, adjusted 12-year-old to they didn't know who you were overnight?
Almost. So I was able to bury it for a while. And then it kind of all bubbled up to the surface. And they didn't know what was going on. And the fact that they didn't pick up on this says nothing about my parents.
Right.
I kept it so deep in. I had involved parents. I had parents that gave me a space to be emotional and vulnerable. I wouldn't get there. I wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
So that has nothing to say about my parents. I was just surviving at that point.
Well, and the people who love you in your life, your parents, things like that, are just as guilty as we are sometimes of seeing what we want to see. So it's easy to miss those things. So there's no indictment here. It's just
right. And who would think it?
Yeah.
Like who would see a very rebellious and angry and upset teenager and just assume that when they know that they provided a safe home in a safe area? Like that's
we did what we thought was right.
Yeah.
What a shock for them.
Right. And it was a huge, now as a parent, man, I can't imagine. But they did what they could with that information.
Yeah.
And it was horrible for everybody involved. And at the time I couldn't empathize with them. I was like, now like help me. And they tried.
Were you angry at them at the time? Like, I know you're protective of them now as you tell this, but in the moment, in the disclarity, were you?
I don't know if I was angry at them or if I was angry in general.
Sure.
Because I was angry at anybody who looked my way.
Yeah.
I was so angry. I think I was probably just angry with them because they were there. Like, they were there to be my emotional punching bag. And they took it, they ate it. Nobody gives you a handbook on how to deal with that as a family. Because not only did this happen to your child, this happened to your child years ago. So I know they probably feel really guilty.
As a parent, they would feel like they missed something.
And the fact that they missed it says nothing about them as parents.
Sure.
Well, you just said, and that says something to me, is I would have gone to my grave with this. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is? Why were you so determined that never needed to be said out loud?
There were a few reasons that I now as an adult can pinpoint. So, now I tell y'all, we theorize it might have been an act of gang violence. We think it might have been like gang hazing to get, like, those are things that happen. It could have been someone just dressed as a police officer to, gain a child's trust because, your parents tell you when you're little, like, if you're lost, go find a police officer. Mm-hmm. So, but at the time when it happened, I didn't know all that. I knew that was a police officer. So I thought there is something fundamentally wrong with myself to my core that this happened. Not only that, we grow up seeing these people as heroes. Mm-hmm. So my entire worldview got turned upside down. I couldn't trust myself to even relay what happened correctly.
Yeah.
And I was mature looking for my age. Mm-hmm. So I was rationalizing, well, he didn't know I was a child. And it didn't matter if I was, 12 or 32. It didn't matter. And I know that now, but I couldn't tell you that when I was 12.
Right.
And it just, that's something that you really can't understand until it happens, how much it deeply impacts how you feel about yourself.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can say it till I'm blue in the face, but it's really unique going through it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, what I'm telling y'all now, I couldn't call it rape for maybe a decade. And I refused to blame him, not because I was protective over this individual, but because, like, there's no way that I was just this victim of, like, textbook violent sexual assault. Mm-hmm. And but that's all it is, and there's nothing more to it.
Yeah.
And that took me a really long time to reconcile.
Right.
And Claire, what I'm about to say probably doesn't need to be said, but you're very cautious in how you tell this, and I really appreciate that. And you're protecting kind of your parents and the feelings of everybody around you. I want to tell you that it also says nothing of you that you were angry at the world at that moment, right? It doesn't say, listen, this is the fallout of trauma, right? And so while you're protecting everybody around you, I would ask that you, and again, it may not need to be said, but you deserve that same protection. And it's heartbreaking to hear these stories. And so to be angry at your parents in those moments, if it occurred, and even to maybe blame them as a 12-year-old, right, where we think my parents are supposed to be there for me. We don't understand they didn't have a crystal ball and could be there and protect me. As a child, we're like, where were these protectors? And not to mention this person was dressed as a police officer, a protector. I can only imagine the confusion and the just maybe confusion is the best word I can do. So all of that would make sense. And so I just want you to know that it says nothing about you either, right?
So everything I'm telling you now as a 25-year-old who adjusted the best I could given the circumstances, at 12 years old, everybody.
Yeah.
Like, if you crossed my path, I was a classic case of the victim becoming the victimizer. Because I didn't, I like to give myself grace in that regard because I was a child, a small child.
Sure.
Not even a teenager yet. But I was very angry. I let you know I was angry. I couldn't tell you why. Because I really just didn't have the vocabulary for a very long time. But I was a disaster. I was a disaster.
Why do that's interesting. You've mentioned two things, eating disorder and this intense anger. What do you know now in retrospect, maybe what purpose those filled for you?
Yes. So that anger was 100% just defense. Because I was safe, I was happy, I was healthy until I wasn't, and it happened that fast. I didn't know what was coming next. So I think it was just like a classic case of, I'm going to hurt you before you can do it to me. And I didn't know that at the time. But as far as the eating disorder went, I think I mentioned earlier, I was mature looking for my age.
Yeah.
I wanted to become as unappealing, as sick as I could. Because I didn't, the things I knew men found to be like sexually appealing, I wanted nothing to do with.
You wanted
Because
them gone.
if this happens again, that's going to be the end for me.
Yeah.
And that was all subconscious. I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah.
I just knew I had to look
Different.
very different. And I didn't care if I looked sick. I don't care if it killed me. I had to look different. So I went through like 1,000 different hair colors. I dressed like everything was super, super baggy. Like I didn't want you to know what I looked like under that. And that carried till I was 19 maybe. Like it's been recent that I got my head above water with this, and I didn't realize how much it still affected me until past 2 years maybe.
Yeah.
But the way I'm speaking about it right now, I wouldn't even tell you it happened 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let that come out. Because even though I could logically tell you I did nothing wrong, it wasn't my fault, I was a child.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Well, Claire, thank you for doing that now, because trauma is common in our society in general, and then it becomes umpteen times more common when you look at the addicted population. And so your bravery right now is no doubt helping others. You know, I don't want to, we're not going to park here, but can I ask you one more question about that, or maybe make a comment? And
Sure.
The thing that I found interesting about the two things you mentioned, both eating disorder and anger, is that those are both ways to dysfunctionally regain control. Does that strike true for you? Like right when you, in the situation you were in a rape situation, you are immensely out of control.
Right.
And so both of those elements have a strong component of control in them. Was that something you had to look at?
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that rang very true to me. To a point where, I mean, it looked like another like clinical diagnosis. Like it could have been OCD.
Sure.
If you did not know the context in which I was doing it. But I could tell you to the ounce what I weighed that morning. I can tell you to the ounce how much water I drank. I could tell you by the hour that it would be back down. Yeah. It was very, and that bled into every aspect of my life.
Yeah.
Was just that lack of control and desperately trying to regain it.
Yeah.
And
so at 14, you're in a treatment for the eating disorder. So your parents knew that was a problem.
right. So that manifested.
No substances yet? Okay.
Nothing yet. So that manifested, and that was, we could pinpoint what that was, but nobody knew why.
Right.
So I went to a treatment center, and I got honest there, not knowing that would have to be relayed back to my family. Just, 14, how would I? But that did get back to my family, and then that opened a whole other can of worms. That was tough. It was tough for all of us.
How did they take it?
So they protected me from their reactions. I don't know immediately.
Right.
They put on a brave face for me.
Yeah.
But I knew it had to be hard.
Sure.
Really hard.
Well, you know your parents, and you even said now as a parent.
Yeah. I can't imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like now that I'm a mother, forget it. I cannot imagine. And then they did the absolute best they could do given the situation. But
Well, and I'm sure anger and heartbreak were common to everybody involved now.
Oh, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So coming out of that admission and breaking that silence, what happens as a result of that? Is there any sense of relief, or is this now a new level of tension?
It's new. It's,
Well, now everybody knows.
yeah. So then I had to go to therapy, and I was not ready to open up about it. And I wasn't ready until I was probably 22. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't open up to anybody.
Yeah.
They would take me to these, therapy appointments, to these advocacy centers. And I would just, shut down.
Yeah.
And I would have a bad attitude about it too. And they weren't getting anywhere with me.
Did that also feed your anger? Then now I got to,
Yes, for sure. And when it came back out, from 12 to 14, I survived. But by the time I hit 14, now I'm having night terrors every night. I'm suffering horrible flashbacks, but I didn't realize it. I was having night terrors. I was having panic attacks. I was seeing this individual in places where he wasn't. Mm-hmm. I was smelling him in places that it was, I could have probably been classified as clinically insane at that point. And I buried it because that's all I knew how to do, was just bury it. And I became very good at burying it. There were other people in my life who had no idea, and I wasn't going to let them know. So I ate it, and I thought if I just sat on it, it would go away.
Is part of this then because you're still owning the shame that's clearly not yours to own here? Or you're still, because you talked about how bad you felt about yourself.
For sure. I would shower a million times a day. Yeah. That kind of stuff. I was afraid to run into him because I would be embarrassed. I didn't know if he was local.
Right.
What if I saw him at the Walmart? He's seen me in the most vulnerable position of my life. I was that was how warped I was, that the only thing I really had to worry about was my own embarrassment.
Claire, I have to say, I just said, because none of these reactions, and I'm sorry, maybe I'm feeling a little fatherly at this moment, but it's not clinically insane. I know you know that now. Yeah. It wouldn't have been looked at that way. All of these reactions are totally normal, right? This is PTSD is what you're talking about, right? And so I just really want you to give yourself some, I hate to sound so counselory, right? I mean, we get into this, but anyway, I really do. I mean, I'm sitting here heartbroken. You're a survivor, and having walked through that, and to be sitting here as courageously as you are right now, when only 2 years ago this became a topic you were willing to talk about, is mind blowing to me, and super respect for you. So please, none of this is outside of. There's not a drop of what you've said that wouldn't make sense, right? So
I knew you were fixing to have to say it. I could feel it.
Man. So just. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah.
I'm proud of you and grateful.
Thank you.
For your transparency.
Absolutely. I'd like to take a moment to recognize a major podcast sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by America's Thrift Stores, your go-to option for decluttering and giving back. You have a closet bursting at the seams or a garage that's seen better days? We've got the perfect solution for you.
That's right. America's Thrift Stores makes it easy to clear out the clutter and make a positive impact in your community. Whether you are cleaning out your wardrobe, downsizing your living space, or just looking to give back, America's Thrift Stores has you covered.
And here's the best part. You've got options. Schedule a hassle-free home pickup, drop off your items at one of their convenient donation sites, or swing by an America's Thrift Store to donate in person. No matter which way you choose, you're making a difference.
Every donation you make to America's Thrift Stores directly benefits charities in your area, such as the Home of Grace and other fantastic organizations dedicated to helping those in need.
For example, donations made to America's thrift stores in southern Mississippi help the Home of Grace provide support and assistance to individuals facing drug and alcohol addiction. Your contributions make a real impact on their mission to provide freedom from addiction through Christ-centered recovery. So, not only are you decluttering your life, but you're also helping build a stronger and more supportive community.
It's truly a double blessing. So what are you waiting for? Clean out that closet, clear out that garage, and make a positive difference in your community by donating to America's thrift stores.
Visit America's Thrift Stores online to schedule a home pickup, locate a donation site near you, or get directions to one of their store locations.
America's thrift stores, where giving back never goes out of style. When you mentioned the shame, I think that that's a lot of it, and I'm starting to realize it's one of the things a lot of people don't talk about is that shame and how long it keeps you way down here, and it convinces you that you better not tell anybody anything.
Yeah.
It has to be something wrong with you, and that's why I mentioned that at first when you said you take it to your grave, because that was shame. And we don't know how to put a word to that either.
Right.
It just feels.
Well, and while it didn't happen right away, breaking the silence is the first step to breaking the shame. So,
Right.
And I'm curious to see where that finally happened for you, right? So, so here we are at 14. We've broken the silence, which has only really kind of made you aware of maybe at a deeper level of the shame and everything else.
Right.
So, where does it take you from here?
So, I was still incredibly compulsive. So I had come out of, the eating disorder treatment, but I hadn't done any of the hard work, and I give myself a lot of grace for that because I was a kid.
Amen.
Hadn't done really any of the hard work. I just wanted to move on. Like, I wanted to move on. I wanted to stop thinking about it. I wanted to stop talking about it. But when I wasn't talking about it, I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
But that's all I knew. That I didn't see a light at the end of that tunnel. So I continued school. I was, very successful in high school. I was a good athlete. I was this huge band nerd.
Really?
Who'd have thunk it?
I wouldn't have seen that.
So I really, I
You
really
performed well.
But the only reason I think that I did well in the way that I did well was because I didn't see it as an opportunity to make something of myself. I didn't see it as something I was passionate about. I saw it as a way to hide into. Now, nobody would look at me and put my identity into what happened.
Right.
But I did. So you saw everything I saw, and I was waiting on someone to to know, and the jig would be up.
They'd all figure it out.
They had it all figured out, and they'll never see me as anything other than that moment as well.
What about friendships in high school? I imagine you made friends, but you could only get so close to them.
I was so surface level. Very surface level friend. I wouldn't give you much information. You could spill your guts onto me, and I would be trustworthy with that information.
So they probably thought y'all were a lot closer than you were, but you knew because you could only come to that certain point. Okay.
Still guarded.
Very, very. But I could put on a face like I wasn't. I could pretend I wasn't, and I just trained myself to do that over time. I was still very angry, but it had transitioned from outward anger to inward. I was less of a terror to my family, but I was just...
You were fully embracing the wrongful image of yourself at this point.
100%.
Yeah.
I made that my own identity.
Yeah.
And nobody else would ever do that. Even if they knew what I knew.
Yeah.
But you couldn't have told me that as a teenager. And because it happened at such formative years, I think I hardwired my brain to think that way. And that took a while to undo, and I'm still working. It's probably going to take me a while to, because I spent with this image, I'm 25 now, for at least a decade, like close to half of my life. That's what I saw. Mm-hmm. So because I was so young, like the way a healthy and well-adjusted child would develop, I didn't do.
Yeah.
I trained myself to be in such fight or flight.
Yeah.
That was my normal.
Sure.
So it got to a point where I just assumed you operated that way and you operated that way. So I didn't even think I was all that special. I just assumed that was normal. And man, everybody's just walking around living like this, huh?
Well, you weren't going to have any deep conversations to figure out that it wasn't like that.
Right.
Well, and then drugs and alcohol come along and basically reaffirm the distortion of your reality, right? And where do they enter the scene?
So I joined the military when I was 18.
Right out of high school.
Right out of high school. I had graduated in May or August. No. May or June.
Yeah. August, you would have started.
You're right.
Yeah.
That's where I got that. That's where the disconnect happened. So I graduated in May. I think I was in boot camp by
maybe August.
That might be where I got my August from. There was not a lot of time. I didn't have any downtime.
Did you discuss that? Or like, did you put a lot of thought into that? Discuss it with your family? Or is like, this is what I'm going to do?
That was just, I was applying for colleges and I was getting accepted. And then I just, you know what? No, I don't, that's a mystery to me. I don't know what happened. But I loved it.
Yeah.
What did you love about it?
I thought it was very cool. I thought I was cool. I loved, the movies and stuff. I loved the idea of, the power that it could eventually lead.
What about the structure?
I loved the idea. I've always been, I've never had a problem with structure. I've never had a problem with authority. Weirdly enough, I've never had a problem with finishing something to completion. Mm-hmm. So I was just, I thought, college can come later. And if I do this, it'll pay for it. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a 6-month thought process. Like by the time it sparked into my head to like, okay, now I'm going to do this. It didn't take long at all. And to this day, I couldn't tell you why I did it. I'm glad I did.
Yeah. How long were you in?
I didn't even finish a contract. So this is, I also loved the idea of, I would get away from what happened. The distance was a really attractive thing to me. Like the distance, they would never know. We'd all be on equal playing fields.
It's not just locationally, though, right? Like what the structure gives you is the ability to get away from your own thought process.
You didn't have time to wallow.
Exactly.
Like there was no, like you close your eyes, you wake up, someone's screaming at you.
Yeah.
It was very fast. It was like I did not have time to sit there and pine. So I loved that, and then I started having seizures. So they happen randomly. Then I go to the hospital. Then the doctor goes to a neurologist. A few EEGs later, I got an epilepsy diagnosis. So I found something that I loved, and it's gone. And like, that's it. It's gone. That was probably the second hardest thing I had gone through. But if you asked anybody in my personal life, did that really affect me? They'd have told you no, because I had perfected the art of shoving it down, not reacting. But
had you started drinking or anything at this time?
Not to a point to where it became a problem. It probably took me a year to lead up to that. So I got out, and I didn't tell anyone that it affected me, but I started drinking. So when I was
18, 19 now?
at this point I'm probably 20.
Okay.
maybe 21. That started when I was 20. I can tell you that because I couldn't buy my own alcohol. I pretended it didn't really affect me, but I am drinking and I'm like, this is it.
This will fix it.
This is like, and at first, I could sleep. I could, I could have fun. I could like watch a movie and not get in my own head and like have a whole panic attack over that something happened when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So at this point now, I'm beating myself up for still being affected by something that happened when I was a kid. So at first, I didn't do it to the point where it became full-blown alcoholism. But once it did, and it didn't take very long. I loved it. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time, like, I'd smoking weed in, like, high school. But that never, like, I could put that back down. It wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
After a seizure, the rescue medicine, or before, is a benzo. I
didn't matter.
Didn't care. They could sit in my cabinet for a year and I wouldn't even think of them. I didn't care. It was alcohol. And like I said at the beginning, if I found some sort of destructive, compulsive behavior, I would do it an insane amount.
To the bitter end.
Till the bitter end. Yeah. I didn't care if it killed me. I didn't care if it, at this point, I didn't care if it killed you. Mm-hmm. I just had to do it. So I started drinking, in a matter of probably 3 months, every waking hour was spent drinking.
That was quick.
Very quick.
So you don't ever you smoke pot in high school. That's it. And don't start drinking until 20.
Yeah.
And within 3 months.
I was an intense alcoholic. Like,
were you the raging alcoholic you described?
The raging alcoholic.
Well, you had exhausted your shields, right? Mm-hmm. So it started out, it's funny because I just wrote this progression just before we got here. It started out as anger. That was your initial shield. And you were angry at everybody. Mm-hmm. And then it became anger itself. And you attached to this identity. Then it became, can't read my own writing, eating disorder as a striving for control. Then it became the structure of the Navy. And then when that was ripped away from you, alcohol filled the shield gap, right?
Right.
And so it makes sense that it went from 0 to 100 in no time flat, right?
It could have been anything.
Yeah.
If I would have found another vice, it would have been that.
At any time during this, were you ever still practicing or struggling with eating disorder, or did that just end when you left that treatment center?
I had, like, I had a bad week.
Okay.
So, like, I was having panic attacks. I wasn't sleeping. I was having, like, what I know now are flashbacks. Then it would resurface because it was just comforting at that point. After so many years of it, it's comforting.
What's comforting?
The eating disorder behavior.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I wasn't putting a lot of thought behind it. It was just something that I did. And it was something that I could also put down. But it was, it would come and go. And so once the drinking got involved, or once I got involved with the drinking, then the eating disorder would go down. If I tried to stop drinking, then it would come back. So when one went down, the other one came up, regardless of what it was.
Yeah.
I was strong and healthy when I was in the military, but that was my vice. Was that control. Everybody in here is on an equal playing field. That was my vice. It was healthier than anything I was doing, but I wasn't using it in a healthy way. I wasn't letting this be a healthy outlet. I made that my identity too.
Yeah.
So I've made everything, good or bad, that has happened to me in my life, my identity. I didn't know who I was. And also when I got out of the military, like short notice, because in my head I was doing 20 years. I'm having a full identity crisis in my early 20s. because I didn't know what I was anymore. I didn't know what I could be.
In retrospect, do you think, because that's interesting you just said that, because from an outsider looking in, right, sometimes I think it's just better to make a statement and you correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, go for it.
From an outside looking in, I'd say you were already in a identity crisis, even in the Navy, right?
For
you
sure.
were this
For
is
sure.
just a continuance of it, right? Okay.
And now I could I always had a plan B, you know?
No, you didn't.
If this is going to sound horrible, but if I don't feel better from these, you know, what I know to be symptoms of PTSD, if I don't feel better, I just kill myself. That was always my plan B. But I had a little bit of relief in the military. So I didn't have time to think about a plan B. I mean, it was that quick, y'all. It was that quick. And I didn't give myself the space to grieve. And I needed to.
Yeah.
Because it broke my heart. But nobody knew that.
Sure.
And why would they? I would tell everybody, tell them blue in the face, like whatever. And that's not true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was a big
Can I ask you
oh no moment.
question about that? Because I've heard people talk. Was there a sense that if you let yourself feel the hurt related to something you'd really put your heart into, Navy, right? Was there a sense that if I let myself feel this, boy, everything's coming out, right? There's no shutting those gates.
I won't be able to stop.
Yeah, I mean, going back to everything else I've tried to hide.
Yeah, this feeling is going to continue until I die.
Yeah.
Like until this feeling kills me. And I felt things so deep that I thought they could.
Yeah.
I definitely thought if I let one thing out, it's all going to come out.
So you couldn't let any of it out?
Nothing came out. Nothing came up. Like during the time I'd lost a pregnancy. You could probably you could ask my family or anybody in my personal life now if that affected me and they tell you no.
Yeah.
And that's not true.
Right.
But I had only known how to cope with things the way I was coping with them. Yeah. Never letting it out. Never feeling things. Like just sitting and feeling. I never did that. If I could pretend that they weren't there, they won't be there.
Yeah.
And that's what I did until I could not.
Yeah. Where does it become that, where you could not?
So when I come home, I am in, come back to Alabama and go back to my dad's house. I am in the depths of full-blown alcoholism. You can't hide that. You can think you are, but you can't. Yeah. We see that all the time. Mm-hmm. But I thought, I didn't know the space the way I know it now. I thought, I have everybody fooled, and I did not for a second. So I got an ultimatum, go to treatment or get out of our lives. Because I was destructive, 100%.
Yeah.
I was a pain. I was scary. Nobody knew if I was going to, not come home that day, if I was going to get behind the wheel. I mean, so I was given that ultimatum and
to go to treatment,
or leave. Well, I couldn't leave. Where else was I going to go? So I went to treatment, not because I was ready for treatment, not because I wanted to recover. Just to shut everybody up. And that was it. And that's why I went. It didn't stick.
That was attempt one?
Yeah, attempt one. It took me 2 to get it right. That's okay.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. So what was that shot at it?
So
you appease everybody. All right, fine.
Yeah, sure.
Where am I going?
So I went to the closest one. And that was Home of Grace. So I went through, and my problem was never executing something toward completion. Sure. So 90 days came and went.
And I know you were an excellent client and you did all the things.
I didn't doubt I could, but I wasn't an honest client. I didn't do the hard work.
Right.
I skated through, and I was pleasant and I was helpful and I was, smiling the whole time, but I didn't get to the depth of anything.
Yeah, well, Kathryn used the word earlier, performer, right? And that's
100%. I was performing. 100%. You got me clocked there. That's exactly what I did. I performed.
And you did it very well.
I would only let you see what I wanted you to see. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to be impressive. I wanted to be the star client, not for any reason other than I was not going to let anyone see the depth of how ugly I saw that to be. I thought I was so disgusting. And if one of them, whether it was a counselor, a house mother, if somebody clocked me, it was game over for me. And I could not let that happen. So my goal was never recovery. My goal was never long-term sobriety. My goal wasn't even to be a good Christian. My goal was to make it through. Was to survive through without them finding me out. That's all I wanted to do, and I did it. And it wasn't sustainable.
How long did you stay sober?
So I had some lapses. They weren't full-blown relapses, but I had a day I would drink here, 2 days I would drink there. Because I knew that this was a horrible thing, and I didn't want it anymore, the alcoholism itself. But I was white-knuckling the whole thing. So I was not comfortable in sobriety at all. Every moment I was thinking about it, even if I wasn't acting on it, in my head I had relapsed the second I got out. And I had little lapses here and there, nothing that stuck long term. And I was very close to a full-blown, throw my hands up in the air, I don't care if it kills me, relapse. I took a pregnancy test and I'm pregnant. I was in a relationship. And there are a few reasons why that's so important that it happened when it happened. I was very close to drinking, but the only thing that stopped me was I knew I was pregnant. And I just wasn't going to do it. If I had started already and then found out I was pregnant,
you wouldn't have been able to stop.
I don't think I would have stopped.
Yeah, but now you had somebody to perform for
That's exactly what it was.
Sure.
So I couldn't, I've already lost a pregnancy and that really ate me up.
Even if you didn't talk about it?
Even if I didn't talk about it, and I didn't. So I find out I'm pregnant and I put it down. Always in my head, I knew there would be an end to this though. I knew in 9 months I wouldn't be pregnant.
You could drink.
So I went that entire pregnancy physically sober. But in my head, I was in the depths of a full-blown relapse.
Yeah. What a great, by the way, if I can just pause you, what a great distinction, right? Wow. Yeah. Sobriety, I always say this, is the absence of the drug and the alcohol, but recovery is the addition of healthy living. And so you were really in relapse. You were just in sober relapse.
That's exactly what it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a powerful
Well, how often
distinction.
do we try to tell clients, like, it really starts in your head, like you basically just, you knew it.
So I was just a dry drunk I've heard before.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing. Then I had my son. And I maintained the level of sobriety I was keeping, which wasn't really sobriety at all.
After you had him.
After I had him.
So you were drinking periodically?
Not at this point.
Okay.
It was just all the inward addiction stuff, just not hitting the bottle yet.
Not doing the action. So at the time I was with my mom, his dad and I had broken up during the pregnancy. So I was living with my mom in her house, but my mom was travel nursing at the time. So she left for Montana when my son was 3 months old. I bet that night was when I picked up the bottle. So I was drinking a normal amount, like maybe 2 beers every other afternoon. But all I did by doing that was planting the seed that I was not really an alcoholic, because an alcoholic couldn't do that. It'd be, all just wouldn't be sober. So then I got more comfortable with it. And this is like, I'm going to explain it like this happened in a matter of months. Y'all, this was probably days.
Yeah.
So I made up my mind that I don't have a drinking problem. I had rationalized the amount of drinking I was doing because I was college aged, and that's just what you do in your early 20s. And deep down, I knew that's not true because I still hit it. And at this point, you can DoorDash alcohol. So I wasn't drinking and driving. I was ordering it and showing my ID at the door. And I maintained that. And then I got caught.
Your mom?
My brother made an unexpected appearance.
While your mom was away.
Mm-hmm. And I was drunk.
Do you think that they suspected? I don't know. Did you talk to them on the phone?
I could have.
Were they checking on your son?
Probably. But
yeah,
those weeks there, even if it was just a week, I still couldn't tell you if it was weeks or days.
Yeah.
They probably had a suspicion because, in our mess, we think we hide it so well.
Yeah. Yes.
But, I was faced with the go to treatment or now you're going to lose your kid. And the first time I went through treatment for alcoholism or addiction, I kind of had this sense of, I'm not like that. My kids aren't in DHR custody. I never went to jail because I escaped all of this with a speeding ticket. So I've never seen, everybody's rock bottom looks different.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have to get brought back to life or if it's, people knew I was drinking around my kid. Everybody's rock bottom is going to be different.
I'm glad you said that. I think a lot of people get caught up on that. Well, my rock bottom doesn't look like theirs, so I must not have hit rock bottom yet. And that's not the case.
That's not the case. And that's a very dangerous place to put yourself in. But I was there the first time I went through. I was like, I haven't done any of that. No, I've never been to jail.
Yeah.
The first time I went through, I don't even have children. So
yeah,
I can't lose them. Like, I'm not like this.
Well, and it was really easy to compartmentalize because you didn't have all of those things.
No. And if I ever did have a child, I wouldn't.
I would never.
Until you do.
Yeah.
Until you do. So I was faced with, now go to treatment and maintain it, or you'll lose your kid. So at this point, I'm now faced with losing my child. Whether it be losing custody or, I don't know, but I'm faced with that. And that was, two things can be true at the same time. I would have done anything for that child. I'm an alcoholic. Both of these things are true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something had to give, and it wasn't that baby. So my dad, he told me, I'm not going to beat you up anymore than you're beating yourself up right now. This is what grandparents are for. Go get healthy. And the second time I went through the same program I went through the first time, there's a rule that if you're a mother and you have a child that you have custody of, that's under 6 months, after a little bit of time to feel you out and how you're going to be as a client, they'll let you bring your baby through. So now he's 4 months, and I got him, and I've maintained him.
I would imagine it's a whole different ball game, not just going through a program, but you've got to take care of your child, do your assignments. What else? What does that look like?
It was hard. It was rough. Oh.
So are some of these tears of joy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was hard. I had to meet classes, get 12 steps in 12 weeks, get brutally honest with the counselors, which I never did the first time.
Right.
All with a baby on my hip, a colicky baby on my hip. And I had, even just in that, just in the staff there, I had unbelievable support.
I'll bet.
If he was napping and I had to go to a class, that baby monitor would go in the house mother's office and they take care of it from there. So he was well taken care of. Yeah. And I've had, my fair share of thorns on my side since then. But I walked through them sober, and it ended in a million little just times it shouldn't have ended the way it did. So it all, if I came through not knowing anything about the Lord, the experience I had going through the second time with that baby and having a lot of things stacked against me, and me still talking to you now, still sober, with an almost 2-year-old, a member of staff at that same treatment center.
Awesome.
That there would turn me into the biggest Bible thumping Christian in the world.
Yeah.
Because it was nothing short of divine intervention. And it's not all been rainbows and butterflies. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've, been through really scary situations since then. You were there for one of them. And everything that could have gone wrong didn't.
Before we go any further, let's take a minute to address the man or the woman listening to today's episode and wishing for a better life. Or maybe addiction has completely overtaken a family member or a friend.
You are not alone. As you may know, the Jesus Loves Addicts podcast is produced by the Home of Grace, a Christ-centered addiction recovery program in South Mississippi with over 60 years of experience.
The Home of Grace has residential programs ranging from 30 days to 12 months. With 2 separate campuses for men and women, they are fully staffed with caring individuals who want nothing more than to guide you to a life of recovery.
Services include individual and group counseling, marriage and family counseling, classes, workshops, GED, and workforce training, all grounded in biblical principles.
And because of donations from the community, the cost of the program is incredibly affordable.
Thousands of alumni from all across the country can tell you there is no other program in the world quite like the Home of Grace.
If you want to start a new path to recovery, don't wait. Speak with their admissions specialist today. Visit homeofgrace.org or call 833-55-GRACE to talk with someone.
That's 833-55-GRACE. Call the Home of Grace today. Do you mind sharing? 'Cause what you're saying now is something that I like to ask people anyway, because I'd hate for the image to be out there that we become a Christian, we become sober, and suddenly life is a bowl of cherries.
Yeah.
We live in a broken world, and what gets fixed when we get into recovery is not the world, it's us, but we're still in a broken world, right? And so do you mind talking about some of those thorny moments, as you put it? And how you kind of survived those in recovery?
So I'm trying to think of how to word this without. So I thought I'd made it through. Everything was fine and dandy. I'm doing well. And then immediate custody battle like that.
Okay.
And I couldn't afford a lawyer. But I went in the courtroom with God.
Amen.
I got primary custody.
And y'all share custody.
He's involved. He's a good dad. We were not good for each other, but he is a good dad.
Yeah.
But in my head, everything that could have gone terribly wrong did.
Yeah.
So I knew I was never going to see that baby again. And we co-parent just fine now.
Yeah.
And you would have never thought that a year ago. We co-parent just fine now. He gets them every other weekend on paper, but he sees them more often.
Yeah.
Because we can do that now.
That's wonderful.
Because I'm not doing things for Claire's best interest anymore.
It's for your son.
It's for my son. And he's so happy and he's so healthy. And he's got 2 parents that adore him.
Yeah.
He's got a whole lot of aunts and grandmothers.
So many aunts.
And
Are we talking about through adoption, so to speak?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen it. They have been the recipient of videos. I missed his first birthday, but they had it there.
Yeah.
Like with the staff. And I mean, he's just like, y'all live there. Y'all live in staff.
So we're in staff house. I'm a house mother now. Which
who saw that coming?
Kathryn saw it coming. But I'm a house mother now. And I have, a corporate 9 to 5 as well. And it's a good job.
Yeah.
And
as you grow with your child, and I'm a father of a 10-year-old, and he's probably matured far past me. Right? He's grown much more than I have, and I say that to my shame. But as you grow with your son, do you see a time that you will want him to know? Certainly not the details, but some of your story. Like, do you see a benefit to that as he?
So, the reason I agreed to even, come here and be this brutal, is I think it is so important to serve as a cautionary tale, because any one of us are a few circumstances away from the absolute bottom. So there will be things that I leave out.
Yeah.
But he's going to know.
Sure.
Even if it's just it's basic, scientific level, you have this gene in your body.
Yeah.
Be careful. So I'll share as much as I think he can handle.
Yeah.
When he asks.
Yeah.
But such a beautiful thing that happened was he was such a small baby. He's never seen mama drunk. He's never seen me at the absolute bottom. He never saw me hating myself. And I take a lot of comfort in that he doesn't have to heal from me.
Yeah.
So I'll share it when he's ready.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that'll be 15. I don't know if that'll be 35, but I think it's very important that we use our own stories as a cautionary tale, or even if it's just hey, there's another side.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, where did you become? Because, while you do such a powerful job of telling your story, was there a moment here that you went from darkness to light spiritually? Or did you get saved somewhere? Was it always a part of your life? Where did Jesus become real to you?
So I always knew of Jesus, but I didn't apply him to my life. I always, I could tell you, he was crucified, dead, and buried. On the third day, he rose from the dead. I could recite mass to all of you, but what about it? You know? That's always where I stood. What about it? I kind of had at its core, he died for our sins. Okay.
Yeah.
But I didn't know him.
Yeah.
What really did it for me, the second time going around, I stripped myself so, I was so vulnerable.
Yeah.
That I needed something. And he was always knocking. He was there when I never got a DUI. He was there when, I kept my baby. He was there when I got pregnant. He was always there. I just, in the last 2 years, opened the door. And that changed everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And he was always there. He always wanted to be there. I just didn't let him in.
Yeah.
I just didn't let him in. And then once I did, my entire life changed. Because even if a situation doesn't pan out the way I wanted it to, there's always been something better on the other side. I wanted full custody of my son. That's not what happened. Now he's got 2 parents that adore him and can work together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I was the captain of that boat, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And I would have said it was better, but we all know that's not true.
Yeah. Boy, what a humble acceptance of that outcome, by the way, if I can just say that. That's awesome.
Even if I don't understand why something is happening the way it's happening.
Yeah.
If I took my hands out of the equation and stopped trying to hang on for dear life and control it. What ended up happening was better than I could have thought it would.
Yeah.
Like the outcome was way better than I would have had.
And even when those outcomes are not what we hope they'll be, it's not hopeless.
No, it's not. It's not. If everything goes wrong tomorrow, you know, it can't always be bad.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, you know, I can rest in that relationship that I have now. But I can say it to you now and I can mean it.
Yeah.
And when I met you the first time, it was a load of horse crap. And I hate that. But that's served me now being a leader in the ministry that brought me to the place where I'm at now is you can't play a player. If you're, you might have everybody else fooled, but you ain't got me fooled.
Well, and you have you probably will see clients if you haven't already that are young that haven't hit those not yet. And you got both sides. Like, hey, I yes, I do understand. I was you. I didn't have a child. I had no charges, no nothing. Until I did. Until I did have a child. Until I was in danger of losing. Like, very quickly can you become that?
Right.
Right. And there's going to be those that I would imagine would listen to you before they listen to someone else.
There's a handful of us that do what I do there. And we're all very different because everyone needs someone different.
Yeah.
There are some people that need the, 15 times convicted felons. And there's someone that needs, I got a speeding ticket, but I almost lost my kid and I wanted to kill myself too.
Yeah.
And, everyone needs someone in that moment. And, I can testify to that because in those 90 days, I needed everyone at different times.
Sure.
Like when I got papers that, about, having to go to custody court, I looked at Kathryn and I was like, why aren't you panicking? And I'll never forget it. She looked at me and she goes, I don't panic. And I live by that because I panicked. You didn't. Look where we are now.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did I panic for? But you couldn't have told me that.
Claire, are you at a point where you can look in the mirror now and appreciate who you're seeing?
Yes.
Yeah?
Because I can now separate myself from things that have happened to me.
Amen.
I can take accountability for things that I have caused, but I know the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know the difference.
Yeah.
And I don't confuse the two anymore. So, and I take so much peace in that I was so silent about like the darkness that consumed me for so long. But now when I get to share it, because I'm at the point now where I think it's a privilege to share it.
That's one of the most powerful things that you've said today.
Somebody, might be at the end of their rope and think that there is no way out. I was there. I get it. I've done it. But I'm on the other side now. And I can show you exactly how to get there, and I'll hold your hand while we do it.
Yeah.
And that's real important to me because I needed people who I look up to now, like my own spiritual leaders in my life.
Yeah.
And when I hear about the things they've done, the things they've walked through, the things that have been done to them, and now you never know.
Yeah.
Like if you just had a conversation, you never think that this could be their past.
Yeah.
But there was a time when they felt just as hopeless as I did.
Yeah.
And we all have a common denominator. And that's, we all found the Lord. I don't think, personally, I couldn't sustain sobriety without him.
Yeah.
I don't think it's sustainable.
Yeah.
You can for 15 years, maybe you can for 20 years, but that, that waiting for the next, just white knuckling the whole thing through. That's no way to live.
Yeah.
That's horrible. That's all you can think about. It eats you alive.
Yeah.
But now, everything's going good. And if it's not, I'm going to be okay. And I know that now.
Man,
I know.
we're gonna put an exclamation point right there, Claire. What a great way to end this. And thank you so much for being here. It goes without saying, I'm just constantly, humbled by everybody that sits in that seat and your courage and bravery to talk about your story. No holes barred. It's funny. I've been writing down little notes and kind of thinking about how do I button this one up. And there's so many good things here, guys. This is another story of hope. We don't really get to see the light at the end of the tunnel unless we're in the darkness of the tunnel, right? I don't know that makes sense, but it's when we examine the darkness we've been through that we recognize the light that brought us out. And I don't know, I don't want to get too flighty here, but Claire said something in here that was just really beautiful. She said, you can be two things at one time. And she said, I was a mom, and there was a lot of character in that. Clearly, this is a woman who takes that role seriously. I was a mom, but I was also an addict. So I was this person trying to be real, and I was also this person trying to hide from everything that was real. Guys, that's cognitive dissonance. That's the discomfort of addiction. If you're there, if you're in that, if you find yourself performing, right? We call it being a human doing instead of a human being. If you're trying to do your way out of it, guys, pause, take a breath. You're trying the wrong thing. Pause and let go of the right thing. It's not even letting go of the drugs and alcohol. That needs to be let go of. But it's letting go of everything that feeds that. Let go of the shame. Let go of the wrongful images you have of yourself. Let go of the beliefs that are lies from the pit of hell about yourself. Guys, there is beauty from ashes. You guys see it here week after week after week. Thank you again, Claire, for being one more of those stories. And guys, we are just so grateful that you're with us. It's Jesus Loves Addicts. As you know, JesusLovesAddicts.com. Please message us. Let us know your own story. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, God bless.